Sometimes players need to be challenged for them to have fun. Yeah, playing on easy mode can be a good way to unwind on occasion, but it can only take you so far. And when it comes to games where it's player versus player or player versus dealer, individuals will need to face people of comparable skill for them to face a challenge. One way of doing this is by participating in tournaments. They're also a good way to not only challenge said player, but to also improve their skill set. Greetings and welcome back to Checkpoint Gaming Blackjack. With this episode, we'll be going over tournament play. With blackjack tournaments, they can be played in one of three ways. First is competition with non-value competition chips, where the winner is the player who has the highest chip value at the end of several shoes. Second is live money competition, where nominal live competition chips are used, where players will keep their chip value at the end of each round, regardless of their ranking within the tournament. And third is elimination blackjack, where each session consists of several hands that possess one or more designated elimination hands incorporated into the session, with the player or players who possess the lowest chip count are eliminated from the tournament. Tournament organizers may require each participant to pay an entry fee to participate, which is known as a buy-in, and consists of a certain dollar amount and documented by the tournament organizers. This might also add value to the prize pool, which is in the form of cash, goods, and/or services. But if the tournament doesn't proceed, or a player decides to withdraw before a certain time, as determined by the tournament organizers, then the entry fees are to be returned. From there, the player is to be recorded as being part of the tournament, receive the starting value of chips, and to be randomly assigned a seat at one of the tournament tables. With the buy-in total, the tournament organizers can retain a certain percentage for administrative operations or related prizes, with the remaining balance going toward the prize pool. Before commencing the tournament, the following information will be disclosed: entry application, entry conditions, the value of the entry fee, the minimum and maximum number of players allowed in the tournament, the amount of betting chips that are to be allocated to each player at the start of a session, the duration of each session, the competition prize list, and the means by which the prizes are to be allocated. The tournament organizer also has the following rights: to refuse any entry application, disqualify players for not complying with the rules, disqualify players for not attending at the designated times, to determine player allocation for the sessions, determine player allocation to the tables, determine the number of players from each session who will be able to advance in the tournament, and determine any secondary competition winners, if there are any. With any player that is disqualified from the tournament, their entry fee is not to be refunded. Think of it as a penalty for engaging in improper behavior. Before the tournament begins, the competition director will inform the participants of the play conditions as laid out on the entry form. The competition director is also to be present while the tournament is in progress. Think of it as the captain having to stay with their ship. When it comes to tournament tables, the competition director will designate which ones will be used. At the start of the tournament, each dealer will spread out each deck upon the table to ensure that all cards are present and verify their completeness. And the number of decks used per table is also to be determined with each table using the same number of decks. Once each deck has been verified, the dealer is to thoroughly shuffle all decks together to form a single pile, which is also known as a brick. And this shuffling process is to occur at either the beginning of the day or after the cut card has been dealt during play. Once the pile has been properly shuffled, the dealer will give the cut card to any player at their table and ask them to cut the pile by placing it at any point that is approximately one deck from the front or back of the pile. Once placed, the dealer will take the cards found behind the cut card and place it in front of the pile, followed by placing the cut card about one deck away from the back of the pile. If a player doesn't take their seat at the predetermined time, the competition director will deduct the minimum wager from the player's bank each round of wagering they miss in the first shoe until the player takes their given seat. This deduction process is to continue for subsequent shoes for as long as the player doesn't take their seat. If the player hasn't taken their seat by the fourth shoe, their place in the tournament is immediately forfeited with their entry fee not returned and right to compete being cancelled. Regarding tournaments that use cash value chips or is an elimination format, then the player is immediately removed from the tournament with the player not being entitled to a refund of their entry fee. If a player qualifies for a subsequent round, they can't assign their seat to anyone else. and if the player doesn't take their given seat, they won't be replaced. The player in a competition is the only person to participate for themselves unless they nominate someone else to play for them, which is to be determined by the tournament organizers. With the play periods, each session will consist of a total number of hands or shoes that is to be determined by the tournament organizers before the tournament begins. With elimination play, the designated number of elimination hands are to be determined at this time as well. It is possible for fewer shoes or hands to be played if one or no players are remaining in the game, or a situation arises where the number of qualified players for further sessions have been decided, and additional shoes can be played if they are needed. Before commencing the last shoe, an audible signal is to be given. With an elimination tournament, this signal is done before commencing the designated elimination hand for each table. Tournament tables will also possess signs that indicate what hand or shoe they're currently on. And for elimination tournaments, a second sign is displayed with the designated elimination hands for the given round. The competition direction can also alter the start time for any given session, which is subject to reasonable notification first being given to the players. With wagering, it's done with pre-approved chips and made before the start of any session. A player's chips will also have to remain on the table and in full view of all participants and staff until the session comes to an end and winners determined. Players are also required to only make a single wager within the allotted area for each round in values specified by the table's signage. Otherwise, they'll forfeit an amount equal to the minimum wager to the house. The tournament organizer can also limit the time a player can make a wager, which is to be for a specified time, and is to begin when the dealer is ready to start the dealing process. If a player fails to place their wager within the allotted time, then their wager can be restricted to an amount that is equal to the starting minimum wager for that given round. When it comes to competition chips, they remain the property of the house, even when in possession of a player at the end of any given session. But with cash value chips, they remain the property of the player when in possession of a player at the end of any given session. When the game begins, the players will place a minimum bet as their given ante, which is equal to the minimum bet value, with subsequent bets found within the minimum and maximum limits. All bets are also done in increments determined by the tournament organizers, with no side bets, bonus bets, or other bet types allowed during the tournament. And the dealing of the cards is done from left to right, as oriented from the dealer's perspective, with each participant receiving one card at a time until they are in possession of 2 cards. If tournaments allow secret wagers, then they will have to be clearly stated in the tournament's terms and conditions, along with the number of secret wagers a player can make. To make a secret wager, it's to be written on the appropriate form and possess the type and amount along with all the necessary details before handing the form over to the dealer. Each player is also responsible for the proper completion of their appropriate form. Players can also make a regular wager and a secret wager on the same hand, provided that the bet's combined total doesn't exceed the table's maximum limit. A player also can't make a secret wager if it doesn't comply with the table limits or exceeds the number of chips the player possesses. Once completing the form, the player is to hand it off to the dealer, who is to place a marker in the player's position, followed by handing the form off to the table inspector, who is to record the player's wager. And before commencing each hand, the table inspector is to examine any approved secret wager forms given to them for that given hand to ensure that they comply with the rules. At the conclusion of a hand with a secret wager, the table inspector is to announce the type and amount of the secret wager, with the dealer collecting and paying out accordingly. In addition to this, and before the commencement of the next hand, another player is allowed to examine the approved form that another player submitted for a secret wager. With the completion of a hand, and it has a secret wager that doesn't comply with the rules, the player's completed form is to go through the following process. If the wager is for an amount that is less than the table minimum, then it's ruled as being equal to the table minimum. But if the wager is for an amount that is more than the table maximum, then it's ruled as being equal to the table maximum. If the wager is for an amount that exceeds the amount that the player possesses, then it's going to be ruled as being equal to the amount that the player possesses. When the endorsement found in the secret bet isn't presented correctly, then an amount that is equal to the table minimum is to be deducted from the player's chip inventory. When it comes to the last hand of the final, each player makes a secret wager, and the dealer says no more bets. Then these steps are followed. The table inspector will announce the amount of each secret wager made in that given hand, with each player placing their corresponding amount in the appropriate area. From there, the dealer deals out the first card to the player with the largest bet. But if multiple wagers are of equal size when it comes to being the largest bet, then the wager found closest to the shoe is to receive the first card. Perfect pair wagers also aren't allowed to be made in competition blackjack. At the start of each round, a marker is used to indicate who makes the initial wager, with any successive wagers in each round being made in order of the players found closest to the marker and traveling in a clockwise direction. And starting from the dealer's left, the marker moves in a clockwise direction at the conclusion of each hand and given to the next active player remaining in the game. With a winner of each session, it's the player found at each table who possesses the greatest value of chips found in front of them at the end of play. However, if the players found in the last hand of a session lose their remaining chips during that given hand, then a winner or winners is to be determined by ballot of said players with their names recorded for inclusion on the ballot for the next session. With a number of players from any given session that is to advance in the tournament, it will be determined at the start of the tournament. If the total number of shoes have been played and more than one player possesses the highest value of chips, then said players will continue playing to determine who will advance to the next session. With the final session, it's played at a single table in accordance with the tournament rules. But if 2 or more players possess an equal value of chips at the end of the session, then they will be combined and share the prize pool. If it's noticed, after the dealing of the second card, that the first card in the hand was dealt to a box that isn't behind the marker, then the hand is valid. If a player deliberately violates the rules of the tournament, then they are automatically disqualified. With live tournaments, a player is disqualified if they try to increase their buy-in amount through means other than winning wagers. With the player's entry fee, it will be forfeited, although said player will be able to retain the chips they won or purchased in accordance with the rules. Players who can't buy in at the prescribed amount before a session starts are disqualified with their entry fee not being refunded. With leaving the table before the session ends, a player can only do so with the permission of the competition director. But if the player leaves the table without the competition director's permission, they are disqualified. A player's chips must also remain in full view of the other players and tournament staff until either the session ends or they retire from the game. At that point, their remaining chips will have to be exchanged for regular, nominal stock cash-valued chips. When play ends at all tables used in a session, the establishment is to determine that all negotiable competition chips are accounted for. Players are also required to bet at least the minimum wager of every hand during a session, and can't bet more than the maximum wager. For players who can't bet the minimum wager, then they're eliminated from the tournament. With elimination tournaments, a count is done at the completion of a designated hand, with the players who advance to the next session determined by the tournament rules and the players who possess the lowest value of chips being eliminated. After a designated elimination, and there's 2 or more players possessing the lowest value of chips and a determination needs to be made to see who advances, the affected players will play additional hands to see who progresses. Regarding the chip value of the winner of this playoff, it will be the same value that they possessed at the start of the designated elimination hand. But if all players that are competing in a playoff and they lose all their chips on a hand, then the winner is to be determined by ballot of said players. If a player loses all their chips before a designated elimination hand during a session, then the next elimination hand is to be disregarded. Under these circumstances, the affected players are eliminated given the fact that they lost all their chips. When it comes to the winners of each round, they are the players found at each table who possess the highest value of chips found in front of them at the end of the designated number of hands for the given session. With the final session, it is played at a single table, with a winner of this session being the last player standing with designated elimination hands consisting of a player that possesses the lowest value of chips being eliminated. The exception to this is when, at the end of the final session, the remaining players are in possession of an equal value of chips, causing them to be combined and sharing the first prize. At the end of the tournament, the minimum number of players who are in possession of the highest value of chips will receive a payout. With the payout structure, it is posted at the end of the tournament's first round, with the number rounds being played consisting of 3. With the length of any given round at each table, it is to last for 1 shoe, or how long it would take to deal out the cards from the table's given shoe. With a tournament's shoe, it consists of either 6 or 8 decks and 1 deck cut out with a single card being burned at the start. Depending upon the size of the tournament, the top players of the first round will advance to the second round. From there, these players will be randomly assigned a seat for round 2, with the round then commencing. With the top players of the second round, they will advance to the third round and will be given randomly assigned seats. At the end of the third round, the players will be ranked in order based upon the amount of chips they possess. But in the event of a tie, a fourth round is played by all affected players, which will last until a tie no longer exists, and the shoe doesn't need to be completed for the round to come to an end. From there, the player ranking will be determined, which will influence tournament payout. Of course, different establishments might use a different system, so check in with the organizers to see how their tournament is set up, with the information we presented here as a rough guide on how a tournament operates. And with that said, this will bookend the main series pertaining to how to go about playing the game, Blackjack. We hope that you found this to be helpful and allowed you to better understand how to go about playing the game. As time progresses and any updates get put out for the community, we will return to these episodes and update them accordingly to better reflect the changes that have been made to the game. With the nature of Checkpoint Gaming, we want to present the most up-to-date version of the game as possible to those who wish to play. So with that said, we hope you enjoyed our series pertaining to how to go about playing Blackjack. If you liked this episode, feel free to give it a like. And if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode and happy gaming.